Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a stupendous show for you today.
Thank you. Switching up
for that one, Lindsey.
I was caught off guard. I actually am trying to bring the spring and the summer back, as you can see,
those
with
are
these colorful,
some pretty colors,
non-fall colors.
Does it clash with the, or maybe, I know maybe it goes with the red?
I could go like right inside the
flowers.
plant right there. I could be parked up.
I think you blend in with the.
There we go.
Yeah.
Coming up on Rising, a Trump-appointed judge has blocked his move to deploy out-of-state National Guard to Oregon, and Newsom is celebrating the win.
Well, good for him. Plus, the Gaza flotilla activists are alleging that Israeli officials mistreated them while they were being detained.
And I'll be discussing how President Trump lashed out at a Fox News host, Peter Doocy, yesterday. But first, Robby, what's on your radar?
Let's get to it. Well, so much for the tolerant left. Jay Jones is the Democratic Party's candidate in the race to be the next Attorney General of Virginia. He's a former Virginia state assemblyman, and during his time in the state legislature, he expressed some horrifying and violent thoughts about a colleague and also about children. This news broke over the weekend as screenshots of text messages that he sent back in 2022 were leaked to the media. Jones said particularly nasty things about Todd Gilbert, who was at that time the Republican Speaker of the House of Delegates. Jones said if Gilbert was in a room with Hitler and Pol Pot, Gilbert would, quote, get 2 bullets to the head. He also expressed support for the idea of Gilbert's kids dying because, quote, only when people feel pain personally do they move on policy. He also called the kids, 2 little boys, quote, young fascists. And by the way, he wrote these text messages to a Republican colleague whom he had accidentally texted. But even though that colleague told him directly he was making her uncomfortable, he continued to vocalize his bizarre revenge fantasy. This behavior is creepy, it's weird, it's obviously disqualifying from higher office. I don't think there's any question about that. Yet Jones is remaining in the race. He issued a statement which he acknowledged he had, quote, sent messages that I regret and I believe that violent rhetoric has no place in our politics. He went on to attack his opponent, incumbent Republican AG Jason Miyares, for dropping smears through Trump-controlled media organizations to assault my character, end quote. I don't know about that. Don't the voters of Virginia deserve to know this information? If anything, non-conservative media is covering the scandal reluctantly, as the mainstream knows. It's bad for Jones and makes it a bit more likely that the Republican Miyares could win re-election. The GOP's slate of candidates for Virginia are currently behind in the polls, and gubernatorial candidate Winsome Earl-Sears, the current LG, is facing the prospect of losing her race. Here she was addressing the Jay Jones controversy.
The calls for hate and violence are coming from the mouths of the Democrat Party's leaders. And Jay Jones is just the most recent, and his wish for violent acts the most clear. So if you can't solve a problem, you can't name it, but I will. And here and now, the leadership of the Democrat Party has become consumed with hate.
Meanwhile, CNN covered the story in the following manner. Headline, Virginia's Democratic nominee for Attorney General facing pressure over resurfaced text messages. What was in the text messages, guys? Put it in the headline. He fantasized about children dying. But Abigail Spanberger, who is running against Earl-Sears in the governor race, has refused to call on Jones to pull out of the race. She said in a statement that only that she was disgusted with his comments and she expected him to take full responsibility. I think we should demand a bit more from those who advocate violence in response to political disagreement and think the upside of dead kids is that someone you don't like will feel emotional pain. This is ghoulish stuff. And Lindsey, our president, Donald Trump, weighed in on this as well. He wrote on Truth Social, it has come out that radical left lunatic Jay Jones, who's running against Jason Miyares, made sick and demented jokes, if they were jokes at all, which were not funny. He wrote down and sent to people concerning the murder of a Republican legislature and his wife and their children. Jay Jones should drop out of the race immediately.
Now, I actually agree with you and President Trump. I think Jay Jones should drop out of the race. The part that I don't agree with is the cherry-picked decision on when somebody is speaking out of turn about violence and when they should continue to run for office. So, first of all, there were headlines. You pointed the CBS News headline out, but Politico Politico had a really great headline that said violent, inflammatory text messages. There were other mainstream that called it abhorrent. So I don't want to paint the broad picture like nobody acknowledged how bad his messages were. But Trump, when Pelosi's husband was attacked violently with a hammer, you'll remember that Trump went on Truth Social and said, or actually in a campaign speech, he took the time to say, how is Nancy Pelosi's husband doing, and laughed. Anybody know? And so why would that be acceptable as somebody that you want in office? Or when he went on to say she's building a wall at our border, and even though she has a wall around our house, which obviously doesn't do a very good job, and laughed about that, mocking and making light of a very serious situation. I mean, at a campaign event in Glendale, Arizona last year, he said of Liz Cheney, she's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? So, I mean, these are the same type of things that I would never want anybody in office saying, and I agree with you. Jay Jones should step aside, but he's saying let's put Liz Cheney in a precarious situation where she would die. And you can't really make an excuse for it. If somebody is saying that and also saying that they want other people to be hurt that are in politics, we can't just point out one person.
Paul Pelosi, when I fully agree with you. I agree with you completely. I think how many Republican leaders reacted to that.
And he wasn't the only one with Paul Pelosi.
No, it wasn't. It was shameful how that was really bad, the reaction from many Republicans. I criticized it at the time. I think I did a radar on it saying, this was bad, guys. He was seriously assaulted by a crazy person. You're making fun of it. Unacceptable. The Liz Cheney thing, in my view, is a little bit different because she supports policies of, I would argue, of warfare, of hawkishness. She's major ideological, intellectual supporter of regime change, of nation building, of deploying American troops everywhere. What Trump was saying, maybe inartfully to me, is, she's not going to be the one marching with a rifle. She's sending your kids to die, and she's not going to be doing it. I think it was... Maybe it was a bit incendiary. I don't think it was actually calling for violence against her. It was saying that the people who make the decisions to send us to war never face the consequences of having rifles stuck in their face that our own soldiers face. I think that's what he meant there. So I think that's a little different. Fully agree with you on Paul Pelosi. And the media coverage is all over the place. I saw some that's been better, some that's been worse. Some was saying... Some media coverage was described. I was trying to just find it now. I saw it yesterday. Charles C.W. Cook of National Review called attention to it. Whatever outlet was saying that he was musing about. So they used the word musing over and over again. That's not what he's doing. And by the way, this is so weird. So he sent these messages to the wrong person.
Right.
He didn't mean to send them to that the Republican woman who got them. And then he kept going. Yes, then he kept going. If you had accidentally started sending kind of creepy, certainly overheated, at best overheated language to the wrong person, I think you would shut up after that.
Or unsend
and
quickly.
She was, unsend quickly, and she was like, this is kind of making me uncomfortable, and he kept going there.
But I have a limited...
It makes him seem weird, frankly.
And I have a limited tolerance for people who talk about violence to other people and people who talk about children. So I can say blanket statement across the board that, when those things happen, I never think it's funny, and people should lose... as the American people, we vote you in, then you should not be... I would not be a person that's voting for you to be in that position because that makes me uncomfortable. In the dark, in your text messages, you're not a great person. And so we talk about social media a lot. Right. People can hide behind, an avatar, but when I'm messaging you and somebody leaks it, it's not about an attack against you. It's the fact that you still said that. You still took the time out to do that. And so that to me is a character flaw and not somebody that I want leading me forward. But I also think there has been many instances of President Trump with similar jargon that I really am uncomfortable with, which is what makes me always point to you and ask you, is this the type of presidential leadership that you want? And a lot of times people sweep it under the rug as a joke, but most times I don't think that it's funny.
I don't think this is funny either, and he should drop out, but I doubt that's going to happen.
A federal judge struck down Trump's effort to send the National Guard to Portland. We'll talk about that next. A federal judge has temporarily blocked the Trump administration from deploying 200 members of the Oregon National Guard into Portland.
Judge Karen Immergut, a Trump appointee, sided with Oregon state leaders on Saturday, blocking the deployment and saying that the president exceeded his constitutional authority and likely violated the 10th Amendment. Now, that order does expire in 2 weeks, pending a longer injunction. Of course, the White House vowed to appeal, telling the New York Times, quote, President Trump exercised his lawful authority to protect federal assets and personnel in Portland following violent riots and attacks on law enforcement. We expect to be vindicated by a higher court.
In addition to the appeal, Trump is also looking to other states and their National Guards to deploy to Portland in place of the Oregon Guard. Trump reportedly looked at California to mobilize 300 of their Guard troops to Portland after Saturday's ruling, but Judge Immergut said not so fast. In a rare Sunday hearing, the judge granted a temporary restraining order filed by the state of California to once again block the federalization of troops. Governor Gavin Newsom celebrated the decision on X, writing in part, quote, "We just won in court again. The court granted our request for a temporary restraining order, halting any federalization, relocation, or deployment of any Guard members to Oregon from any state. Trump's abuse of power won't stand."
Before that ruling came down on Sunday night, the Pentagon had also called on 400 members of the Texas National Guard to be deployed not just to Portland, but to Chicago as well. And unlike California, that move had the full support of the Texas governor. Governor Greg Abbott posted to X on Sunday, "I fully authorize the president to call up 400 members of the Texas National Guard to ensure safety for federal officials. You can either fully enforce protection for federal employees or get out of the way and let Texas guards do it."
Now, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker is speaking out against the deployment of the Texas National Guard, pointing out that the Trump administration didn't discuss or coordinate with him at all, and writing, quote, "We must now start calling it what it is, Trump's invasion. It started with federal agents. It will soon include deploying federalized members of the Illinois National Guard against our wishes, and it will now involve sending in another state's military troops." Pritzker continued, "There is no reason a president should send military troops into a sovereign state without their knowledge, consent, or cooperation."
Well, the reason is the administration argues that federal employees, federal buildings are under attack, and that they have the right to send in troops to deal with that problem. This judge disagrees, so they got to follow the law, and they'll take it to a higher court, and we'll see if a higher court says that well, yes, of course, the president has the ability to protect the safety of there are federal buildings inside these cities, inside these states, and the federal government has every right to protect them. This judge disagreed. Fine. I am dubious, as I've said, about sending in national troops to provide a law enforcement service in areas where, if the city and the state doesn't want them there, I think the city and the state are naive for not wanting them there. I think D.C. has been a relative, not perfect, but success story for what better coordination between the federal government and a willing city, a city with a crime problem, can achieve. And it's a positive model, and it would be something like Portland would be well advised to accept it, but they feel differently, so oh well.
Well, I just find it so interesting that the Republican Party and the president of law and order, President Trump, is trying to circumvent the law and go
to have order.
To have chaos. It's like his National Guard in places is going to cause chaos if there's not cooperation with local leaders. Like you said, Muriel Bowser ended up cooperating with President Trump, and D.C. is a very different situation than all other states. And even Megyn Kelly was very clear about sending troops into our cities is really not the way forward. And she will not side with, she said it specifically about J.B. Pritzker, and she's like, I'm going to be on J.B. Pritzker's side on this one. I don't think it's appropriate. So I think the president is trying to overstep and circumvent, so if Oregon does not want the help, you're going to go to Chicago and then Texas. You have to be blocked by a federal judge twice in order to stop moving forward. Why don't you just try coordinating with J.B. Pritzker? Pick up the phone. You're the president who wants this so bad, saying that we are in a state of emergency, because that would be the reason why. That would be the reason why we would call in the National Guard a state of emergency. And people there are saying, well, it's not an emergency to us. So, a lot of Republicans lie on the fact that states should govern themselves, and they're not allowing the space for coordination or for states to govern themselves. And I think we're setting a dangerous precedent when you go to other states and say, well, I'm just going to take your National Guard if I'm being blocked in Oregon. And people in Oregon, I've been seeing local news reports, they're literally like, wait, what? We don't want the national, people are literally saying that. I'm just watching the local news there, and people are confused.
Some people are saying.
Yes, and but there's enough of them
local
to be.
News you can interview.
If they interview 10 people on the street and 10 people are still confused, well, we can work on this.
They could have interviewed 10 people who agreed with it, and they just didn't show that on camera. Those things are never.
Well, if you think the local news is not to be taken seriously and biased, my point is that there's been several reporting that people there are like, well, of course crime can be cleaned up. Of course we can move forward and build our city better, but that requires some coordination. And so the people there, the voters there, these are all people that put J.B. Pritzker in his position, that put Trump in his position. So then, therefore, let's just coordinate and work together instead of trying to bully our way into the way we want, especially when there are judges saying, not so fast, and we have to keep doing this the wrong way. So we can do this the easy way with coordination, or we can do it the sloppy way where we try to bulldoze Texas troops into another state.
Like, why? Get their own houses in order, clean up their own streets, and then the federal government wouldn't have to do anything. That would be vastly preferable. But these are areas plagued by homelessness and encampments and drug abuse and crime, and the residents are sick of it. And so, even though they interviewed 10 people on TV who didn't want it,
but states have sovereignty, though. States have sovereignty. Why does President Trump think he needs to overstep that? That's what I'm asking.
Okay, so we should just have no federal government, just every state.
What have we been doing the last few years? We have law enforcement. If the federal government wants to help out, they can provide resources in the ways that local law enforcement needs resources. No, this is them trying to push their way through with their version of help. And cities do a great job at governing themselves. Like you said, the same thing that's needed in New York is not needed in Texas. And people who live there can tell you what they want.
Took over a block of the city, and the city did nothing about it for weeks.
Okay, but we're seeing today, not ancient history, that the protests there have been largely peaceful.
There was a successful
insurrection. The protests have been largely
There was an insurrection there in
The only time there was
memory.
a successful insurrection was here in the Capitol. That was ignited.
Successful.
No, it wasn't
Theirs
ignited
was
by President Trump. So he needs to worry about that and the people that he pardoned, as opposed to what's going on in Chicago or what's going on in Oregon.
No,
or
that was a successful insurrection because the rebel forces held territory for weeks. Here, there was a riot.
Yeah, people were hurt. People got killed. What do you mean? So the
operations of the government were interrupted for like a matter of hours.
But lives were on the line. Lives of people that
somebody died in the Chaz zone too.
So both are wrong. So he needs to just worry about the people he pardoned that are dangerous criminals. He pardoned dangerous criminals. Focus on those people first, and then worry about other states. Let's talk about the people you specifically let out on the street. Many of them got rearrested. Many of them got arrested right after that again. It's not ridiculous. I don't understand. Like, what do you mean?
We're trying to arrest people now.
In the A and B block of the show, we talked about oxymorons of President Trump. You want to do this, but you just pardon tons of people that were criminals, but everything he does is an oxymoron. So I just don't understand. You're arguing.
I don't understand.
Out of both sides of your mouth. The left wants autonomy, so Republicans should be happy. The left wants autonomy.
No prosecution of any other crimes anywhere?
No, the left wants autonomy for states.
There is one crime: entering the Capitol illegally.
To govern themselves.
Is the only thing that is a crime.
No, and killing
left views.
And killing people, hurting people. Like, what do you mean? These are all crimes.
I'm trying to lock them up.
These are all crimes.
This is why I got the guard out here.
Okay.
This is how we capture people.
States can handle it, and federal cooperation would be awesome if Trump doesn't try to strong arm and just does it like a normal president would. You know, after Hurricane Katrina, they needed help. Well, guess what? The president coordinated with local leaders all over Louisiana and New Orleans, and that worked out well for everybody eventually because they had coordination. You can't just like throw your hands in the air and say this is what Trump wants to do.
What's worked out well for my neighborhood?
No, it's not about your neighborhood, Robby, because the same sample of the 10 people on the local news report is the same thing as you're telling me your experience.
Why don't you sample me 10 times?
No, it's invalid because you're just one person. Coming up,
more than just a man.
Coming up, J.B. Pritzker has a message for DHS Secretary Kristi Noem. Don't go anywhere.
The Trump administration is also feuding with Governor J.B. Pritzker. The other federal law enforcement issue is ICE.
There were protests over the weekend over the presence of ICE agents in the Broadview and Chicago area. ICE had launched an Operation Midnight Blitz in Chicago, or Midway Blitz in Chicago last month.
Pritzker, however, appears to be fed up. Here he is on CNN over the weekend.
They're raiding neighborhoods where instead of going after the bad guys, they're just picking up people who are brown and black and then checking their credentials. Are you a U.S. citizen? They are the ones that are making it a war zone. They need to get out of Chicago. If they're not going to focus on the worst of the worst, which is what the president said they were going to do, they need to get the heck out.
White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller responded to Pritzker on X, writing, "What is the correct term to describe a city or state ordering federal law enforcement to withdraw in the face of violent attack and suspend federal law, allowing domestic terrorists to freely target its officers and helping millions of foreign invaders remain in our territory?"
Meanwhile, DHS is saying that CBP shot an armed woman on Saturday who tried ramming her car into agents. ICE and CBP have made more than 1,000 arrests since the Chicago operation started. Many on the left have criticized a recent apartment raid where tenants say some of the legal residents were detained despite their immigration status.
If that's really happening, what J.B. Pritzker said, that people are being detained merely because they are black and brown, that is illegal and a serious problem.
Offense.
So I would like to see him present some more evidence for that if it was just something he said on television in the heat of the moment. They cannot, because you just look a certain way, ask you about your immigration. That is not what the court decision said. The court decision said that and a bunch of other different factors taken together could give you reason to be asked about your immigration status, not solely looking Hispanic or something.
Now, I agree. I think I would like to see more reporting because I've been seeing a lot of people show.
My theory is it didn't happen.
Well, no,
this is making it up.
Well, I've been seeing a lot of people that have direct accounts on social media that are posting like, this is happening in my neighborhood. Look at me. I'm not an immigrant. Look at this happen. I recorded it. So it's firsthand accounts that obviously we can't use on our show that are unverified, that'll go through the fact-checking process and we'll see them. But I think I've looked at the Chicago Sun-Times and People magazines, and apparently a couple days ago on October 2nd, ICE agents rappelled from a helicopter and dragged children and families. Some of the children were not migrants at all into U-Hauls and even separated the families. And there were armed federal agents busting down doors. This is all accounts told to Chicago Sun-Times and then re-reported by People magazine, pulling men, women, and children. Some of them weren't even dressed, naked overnight from their apartments, and witnesses are telling them that they broke doors, used zip ties. And so people are seeing this.
Well, there was a viral photo on social media of a kid zip tied. It was a fake photo.
No, it's not that only one. I'm saying the Chicago Sun-Times, the people who live in the
one that went viral.
So there's one
by people as evidence of ICE zip tying a child. That was a fake, or it was a photo of something.
Fine. So there might be one fake one going around out there, but there are witness accounts of what happened in the building going on next door. And so that's important to know that if that's happening, that should make you uncomfortable. Specifically, a few days after President Trump talked to all the military generals, when Pete Hegseth called that big meeting and said, practice basically your war tactics on the cities that we're deploying you to in America, which should make everyone
uncomfortable. Governor of Illinois potentially just making up stories to smear.
Me too, but I'm not just going to believe President Trump's word at this point. I mean, at this point, what is his word?
I don't believe.
I'm going off. So I guess you don't believe Pritzker. I don't believe President Trump. Show proof that it's not happening, because these are witness accounts.
It is happening.
Well, these are witness accounts that are telling you and being reported by multiple outlets. So, as a journalist, I understand. I don't think People magazine just throwing trash up there. Neither is Chicago Sun-Times.
You don't think People magazine's just throwing trash?
No, I don't think they're just false reporting.
I have a different view.
No, I think People magazine is an entertainment outlet, but they also fact check, right? I mean, it's like Entertainment Tonight. They're not just throwing anything up there. They literally ask real questions and post it up in entertainment sense. But that doesn't mean when they're reporting on real stories that it's fraudulent. Like, that is part of their standards team. I
don't know the veracity of the story you're describing. I do know that there was a major viral photo of a zip-tied child that was
Well, I think this
false.
is the overarching point from J.B. Pritzker and from Megyn Kelly. Is that this is just sowing division and is sowing fear within. Megyn Kelly said she doesn't believe that this is the right way forward for the national troops to be in states that don't want them to, specifically that are not D.C. And so if we conflate all the things we just talked about in the last block and this one, it's like, let states govern themselves. Let them have sovereignty and figure out how to handle this. The way forward is not rappelling into buildings at midnight and taking people out undressed. I don't think.
Let's not give them any federal funding then either. Let's just leave them totally on their own to govern themselves. Let's just be a collection of states.
Or you can have a communication between the federal government and local states. You don't have to just bully your way into getting your way. That's childish.
But they're trying to do something for the residents of these places. All right.
We got to go. Still ahead, Trump's attacks on the media have now extended to some of his favorite programs. I'll talk about that next in my lens. Stick around.
All right, Lindsey, what's in your lens today?
Something so profound. I know you can't wait. If you've been following the headlines, you might have seen this one. President Trump is apparently furious because Fox News, yes, Fox News, gave airtime to a Democrat. The president took to Truth Social after Fox correspondent Peter Doocy interviewed Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly about health care and about the government shutdown. Now, Kelly talked about the price of health care and the tax credits at risk of expiring while Congress plays politics. He called on House Speaker Mike Johnson to come back to the table and negotiate, which in normal times would sound like responsible leadership. But instead of focusing on solving the shutdown, the president focused on Fox. Trump wrote on Truth Social, quote, "Why is Fox News and Peter Doocy putting on Democrat Senator Mark Kelly to talk about totally unabated or challenged health care? The fake spin is so bad for Republicans that it's hard to believe we win." He went on to say, quote, "It will be very unfair in the future when they don't have Trump to fight for them. Therefore, we should fix it now." Okay, let's pause for a second. You're the president of the United States. The government is literally shut down. Families waiting on paychecks. And your biggest concern is that one cable network dared to interview someone who disagrees with you? All week, Fox gave the floor to voices that echoed the president's views. Then on Sunday, one segment, they let a Democrat talk policy and suddenly it's a crisis? This isn't about partisan loyalty, it's about leadership. The government shutting down isn't a win or a loss. It's a failure across the aisle to lead. And maybe instead of blasting the media, it's time for everyone in Washington to sit down, face reality, and fix this expeditiously. What's more concerning is that this isn't just one bad post. It's part of a pattern. Earlier this year, President Trump proposed a $1.1 billion cut to public broadcasting, that's NPR and PBS, and filed a $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal. Let's not forget that $15 billion lawsuit against the New York Times. Now, he's also restricted press access to the White House and Pentagon. Remember back in February? He even banned the Associated Press from the White House press pool for refusing to use the name the Gulf of Mexico. And it doesn't stop there. He recently settled for $16 million with Paramount and CBS News over a 60 Minutes piece on Kamala Harris, and $15 million with ABC News over a misquote by George Stephanopoulos. Then aboard Air Force One, he said this about the media a few days ago.
They're 97% against. They give me only bad publicity or press. I mean, they're getting a license. I would think maybe their license should be taken away.
And he seems serious. In case you missed it, late last night, the president took to Truth Social to mock activist and MSNBC host Al Sharpton and request NBC's FCC license be revoked, saying, quote, the Federal Communications Commission should look into the license of NBC, which almost exclusively positively portrays Democrat content. Likewise, ABC fake news about the same thing, 97% negative to Republicans. That is not democracy. That's intimidation. The press isn't supposed to get on board like he's asking Fox News to do, or lose a license because it's critical of an unprecedented president. It's supposed to hold power accountable, ask hard questions, and represent the people, not the president. At the end of the day, freedom of the press isn't a partisan issue. It's an American one, because when leaders try to silence criticism instead of confronting problems, they don't just weaken the media, they weaken the country. Now, if you can't handle a tough question and a critical response, maybe it's not the reporter who needs to change. Maybe it's the leadership.
Well, I obviously disagree with President Trump about the value of Fox News interviewing Democrats. I think that's a good thing, and coverage doesn't need to be, we can't have state-run media where just all the coverage on TV is just relentlessly pro the government. At the same time, what we have is a mainstream corporate press that is, as Trump points out, extremely, excessively, insanely hostile to him.
He pulled this 97% number from no study. He just said 97%.
No,
there's no 97% study. He's just like 97, I think. People are like, what's the source? He's like, 97.
It's from the Media Research Center.
Okay, well, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that.
It's absolutely true.
97%.
Now, in my view, I don't think they should lose their licenses because they're critical of the president. I put that in a very different category from, for instance, NPR and PBS, which are publicly funded and thus should maintain at least some veneer of neutrality, or they should just lose the funding anyway, which is what happened, which is what's great. We are not obligated as taxpayers to pay for programming we don't agree with. That's different than the editorial independence of ABC, CBS, et cetera, which should be sacrosanct, and they should not have their licenses threatened. I also just don't think this is litigating the last battle. In increasingly smaller and smaller audiences for these outlets, people have moved to social media, to independent media channels, to the wide world of the internet, which is much actually less strictly regulated than television is, which is a good thing and allows for more diversity of perspectives, more diversity of thought, more different ways of thinking, reaching audiences. We're a small part of that ecosystem, despite being attached to a large mainstream television company. And I think that's the model moving forward, and it won't matter who gets licensed and who gets publicly funded, because everybody's going to be getting their news from YouTube and from Twitter and from Substack and from TikTok and so on, and that's great.
So President Trump's argument was, we put Fox News on the map, basically. I've been a supporter of it. My supporters like it. Mm-hmm. And you bringing interviews like Senator Kelly on is disrespectful and I'm paraphrasing, to the people that basically watch your network. They don't want to see this. And I just can't imagine that. I mean, there's even been interviews where, you know, like you said, Newsom's doing a lot of interviews. Pete Buttigieg is doing a lot of interviews. It's great to have this perspective on. You don't just want to argue with an echo chamber of people that agree with you, right? You want to see some, I mean, this is the whole Charlie Kirk philosophy. So I don't understand why the president is like trying to, it seems like the ultimate goal is to get people to stop watching the channel. I know he has a beef with Rupert Murdoch. We understand that. He sued Wall Street Journal recently. But like, is MAGA actually feeling the same thing that President Trump does? Or is this his ego saying, I don't want anything negative to happen about me? Because negative press happens, I'm sorry, for all presidents. Like, that's the crown you wear when you hold that huge position.
Right. Well, there have definitely been stages in the past where I think some supporters of the president, MAGA, felt that certain people on Fox were too unfavorable to him in the past. I think that's, I mean, obviously he had, back in the day, the infamous dispute with Megyn Kelly herself,
right.
Who now I think is a very full-throated supporter of Donald Trump in her personality as an independent media figure. But, you know, they've had some friction periodically, and I think Trump and some of MAGA say they think, well, this is the one that reflects our views, so it shouldn't be incredibly. If we wanted criticism of Trump, we could watch many other things. Now, I think it's a great news channel that does a good job of bringing on Democrats and asking them tough questions and asking Republicans tough questions. You know, some of it is news and some of it's opinion. Fox more clearly delineates between news and opinion than actually CNN or MSNBC do. So, you know, if you're watching Brett Baer's hour, the special report, that's a news hour that's hosted by a news anchor that interviews people with opinions and political figures. And if you're watching Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Jesse Waters, you're watching opinion programming. It's their opinion. And there's a pretty clear difference that doesn't, to the same extent, exist on the other networks.
Yeah, I think
that's a good thing. I'm crediting them for doing that.
Right, and I think that the understanding should be once you hit like 6 o'clock in prime time, that's when you add in more opinions. And dayside program is really supposed to be more interviews and less perspective.
I mean, I guess, but here we are during the day.
Well, no, but we're like you said, we're the new media. We are the new media version.
We can do whatever we want.
Yeah, we're in a whole different bucket.
My philosophy is I can do whatever I want.
Well, I just don't think the president should try to sue people into non-existence and threaten suing them. And that's what he's trying to do, like constantly when something doesn't go well. Like even, I'll bring back up the Kamala Harris thing with 60 Minutes. We took out a breath. We took out a pause.
George Stephanopoulos libeled him.
I'm talking about Kamala and the pause. He sues that. I'm talking about the New York Times. He put a lawsuit that judges and people can't even understand what you're suing for, so he has to go back to the drawing board. This is nonsense.
Well, Trump, like every other Americans, everyone can sue anyone for any reason.
And everyone can put it in their presidential library and act unpresidential. You're right. That's fine. I guess we're allowing anything for any president.
Next up, a flotilla, which I had to check the pronunciation of because I realized I'd never said that word aloud, and I wasn't quite sure how to say it, but a flotilla of more than 40 ships has been detained by Israeli defense forces off the Gaza coast. And now some of those who were captured are alleging mistreatment at the hands of the Israeli government. Stay with us. Last week, a fleet of 42 boats carrying aid and food for Gaza were intercepted by the IDF blockade, and some 450 activists, including Greta Thunberg, were taken captive.
Some of the activists have been sent back to their home countries, but described mistreatment at the hands of Israeli guards. Italian journalist Saviero Tomasi reports the soldiers withheld medicine and treated them like, quote, monkeys. Another Italian journalist that was detained said they were repeatedly woken during the night, intimidated by dogs, had their money stolen by soldiers, and had soldiers point laser sights at their guns at them.
Israel has vehemently denied wrongdoing. According to the Israeli Foreign Ministry, it offered voluntary deportation to all the activists. Those who are still being detained chose to stay to go through a legal deportation process. And as for the claims of mistreatment, the Israeli foreign minister called them, quote, brazen lies, and said in a statement that the detainees' legal rights have been fully upheld. But that was slightly undercut by Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, who said he was proud of the way the flotilla activists had been treated, saying, quote, anyone who supports terrorism is a terrorist and deserves the conditions of terrorists, and continuing, if any of them thought they would come here and receive a red carpet and trumpets, they were mistaken. They should get a good feel for the conditions in prison and think twice before they approach Israel again. So there's not, in my view, a lot of credibility here on either side, frankly. Greta Thunberg is not someone I take extremely seriously, and if she's making claims of mistreatment, I don't frankly believe her.
She's a young girl.
Let me finish. She's a fool and a moron and has no idea
Those are
what
strong
she's doing.
words.
And she should not be taken seriously by anyone on the planet. She holds contempt for all humanity. On the other hand, I don't trust that the Israeli forces would necessarily treat these people well. I don't think these people are terrorists if they're trying to give aid to the starving Gazans. I don't know that it's a good idea for them to enter this war zone, contrary to the wishes of the Israelis for their own sakes, but just send them all back to their countries and be done with it. Why are they being detained where we don't know what's going on with them? That seems like a bad situation. Israel should not hold more people. Just send them home, send them all back to their places. Treat them well. Ben-Gvir is kind of an appalling human being. So he probably wants to shoot them all in the head or something.
Yeah, he's extreme, and he mocked their goals. I think that no matter if you agree with the activism or like Greta Thunberg or whomever, but like you said, there were more than a couple people. So there were a lot of people trying to get humanitarian aid over there, and whether we point out Greta or someone else, the point is that people are trying to call attention, which is what activists do as they see themselves, is try to call attention to major issues that we've spent time talking about that deserve more attention and constant attention. So they do dramatic things to make the world continue to talk about it and not forget that there are starving people in Gaza that haven't received the food that they need, largely in part to a blockade by Israel forces and leadership from that food from getting there. Now, I think the bigger issue now that we're talking about it, which was the call to action that they did by doing the activism and asking us to pay attention to this issue that they've been mistreated, is that, there's a mass starvation in Gaza, and there was United Nations had a thing called UNRWA that was created in December 1949 that was the main source of food and anybody displaced, they would provide food and resources, and it was agreed upon by the United Nations. Now, since the war began, it's come to a complete halt, and it's been the most effective way.
Was alleged to be employing people who were
alleged, but like you said, we can't take everything that we're saying. We can't take everything from either side.
Well, I would like not to contribute to any money to an organization.
Yeah, but I would like not to starve civilians. So my point is that we need UNRWA or UNRWA to be fully restored to its work so they could end the famine. That was the only effective way that we saw people actually getting food there. So if people want to get involved, like the president, or figuring out how other nations can get involved, like Europe, who seems to be deeply involved in this, that's one thing that the United Nations can try to implement and come together to figure out how to get that back working and tell Israel what we are going to do as opposed to saying what they are going to do and dictate to all these countries.
Thankfully, we have President Donald Trump on the case.
Yes,
President
he is
Trump,
trying to do something about it.
Who could win maybe a third Nobel Peace Prize after he gets the other two that he well deserves, is trying to get this deal in place that Israel has agreed to, I suppose, and Hamas has agreed to parts of it, and we're thinking hostages could be released soon, and that'd be fantastic.
Now, I saw some headlines over the weekend. I didn't read that far into them, but it was seeming like Netanyahu was, doing some things that were unsavory to the president.
This is not Greta Thunberg's doing. This is Donald Trump's doing.
No, Greta Thunberg called attention to it. That's what we led the story with.
Oh my God.
She's bringing the food and the resources. And that's the point. Idiot. Activists should be good at getting attention. That's the whole point of activism. Whether you like it or not, a lot of people don't like activists historically. But guess what? Their job is to call attention to issues so that we can discuss them and so action can be taken. And so whether or not a lot of people
are working out how to get peace in this region, and
but you're discrediting them for trying to. They had actual supplies and food and resources to bring over there. So I mean, they're trying to do something. So serious people are actually bringing over.
Captures the resources.
Yeah, but the concern is that Hamas wasn't with them when they were on this flotilla.
I'm not saying Hamas is with them, but when they try to distribute it, I'm not saying they are not terrorists. They should not be held as terrorists. They should be sent back to their home countries. Not on Israel's side of that, but the concern is that if they bring in the aid and the medicine, is that Hamas just captures it.
Okay.
That's why this was being done by U.S. forces.
But people in the Palestinian people need to eat. So we need to figure out what the plan is, because the concern is also that we're in Qatar blowing them up. Israel is blowing them up, and we're trying to have a peace deal.
And they apologize for that because they should not have done that.
Exactly. So there's lots of concerns all around, but the biggest concern for me is that the Palestinian people have food at this point because there's a mass starvation going on. So I think that needs to be at the top of the list with every other concern, as opposed to playing this back and forth game. Like you said, it's hard to understand when you have Ben-Gvir, who's so extreme, kind of mocking everything that's going on, and then you have...
Well, he's an extremist.
Exactly, but he's also in a leadership role in Israel, and so that's concerning to me. So there's a lot of concern going around, but I think also high up on the list should be trying to figure out how to...
fewer people would starve.
Fine, but figure out how to get the Palestinian people food since we're here.
We are trying to figure it out.
I don't know that it's that difficult.
I think
it requires UNRWA, UNRWA, getting back in position like it has worked effectively since 1949, moving forward to deliver aid, starting there. I mean, Israel has the upper hand at this point, by far. We can give people food.
Well, Israel has demolished the entire region.
Exactly, so people should be able to eat.
Rebuilt.
And Greta Thunberg's point was, we're going to bring supplies over. You guys can stop us. They've tried this before. It's not their first time.
You don't see how that's a little, like...
It could be
naive.
whatever. It could be naive, but the point is like, okay, we're going to try to do something because, like you said, the president is trying to do something, but he's been trying to do something for 9 months now. Like, people have been starving that whole time. Let's try to do something a little bit more. Well, I mean, people are calling it a humanitarian crisis.
President.
People are calling it a genocide at the UN. Like, bring food. You're the president, and you're in the strongest, most powerful country in the world. You're the peacemaker. You want a Nobel Peace Prize. Get people who are innocent that are starving.
We've facilitated some aid deliveries. We have done that.
Yes, very minimal. And I saw them throwing food at people. People were fighting in the crowd because people have been starving for days. It's a natural reaction. If you and I were starving for months, I think we would be in rare form than our usual.
That they actually just got the food because usually, again, Hamas takes
and there were also reports.
Or just kills them.
Well, that's reportedly. And there
food.
Also were reports of Israeli soldiers. There were also reports of Israeli soldiers being extremely aggressive and harmful to the people as they were trying to receive the food.
No doubt. There has been
and so that's what I'm saying.
Bad behavior.
We need to figure out a new strategy.
The IDF.
UNRWA or UNRWA was doing a good job, allow them to go back to it and maybe be overseen by some neutral troops in this process, since the UN was the people that moved forward with putting UNRWA in place in the first place. Maybe we should just continue that forward and figure out who can oversee it that's not Israel and that's not Hamas, and just get the food to Palestinian people.
Well,
which is
again,
what...
We contend that UNRWA is, or it has Hamas involvement. That was what was contended.
Well, that's not what I found full reporting. I think that it was... that it was just an agency that the UN had agreed upon to get the food there, and it was effective. And so, we're going off of hearsay at this point, and I just want facts and people to not starve. I think that's a minimal request.
That's what I want too. I absolutely want an end to this conflict along the lines that President Trump is attempting to negotiate. That would be fantastic if we have confirmation of that soon.
I hope so. Coming up, some on the left are bashing President Trump and Pete Hegseth's speech to the Navy. We'll be right back after this. President Trump and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth visited Norfolk, Virginia over the weekend to celebrate the U.S. Navy's 250th birthday.
Trump gave a speech where he praised the Navy for its accomplishment. He also took a little bit of time to bash the Democrats for their role in the government shutdown.
But we have to take care of this little gnat that's on our shoulder called the Democrats. They want to give all of our money to illegal aliens that pour into the country. And, I have a bigger heart than they do. But the problem is when you do that, they come in by the millions.
Some people on the left, and I guess also the right, did feel that Trump's comments were not in good taste. Jonah Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Dispatch, writes on X, "If you don't understand why this insanely partisan language in front of uniformed servicemen is beyond the pale and deeply dangerous, I'm not sure I can explain it to you." It's kind of a never Trump, I'm not sure, conservative person, but go ahead.
Pete Hegseth also gave a speech at the celebration where he again went after DEI practices in the military. Let's watch.
Your diversity is not your strength. Your strength is your unity of purpose, your shared mission, your love of country.
Former Vice Chairman of the DNC, David Hogg, says of Hegseth's comments, quote, "Not only is it historically and factually inaccurate, but it is also deeply irresponsible, from the critical role of female spies played in the American Revolution to the Navajo code talkers in our World War II. Our diversity has and always remains one of our nation's greatest strengths."
Okay. What was wrong with this typical Donald Trump bashing Democrats speech? What is wrong with it?
There's the military is comprised of Americans that are on independents, Democrats, Republicans across the aisle, and they are trying to fight for our country. And so the point of a speech there should not be how to sow more division within people that might not align with you ideologically. The goal is that when most people come together is to protect our country, and these people are doing some of the most noble jobs in our country by keeping us all safe. And so it's like, who comes there to figure out how to make people like the whole military doesn't have to be Republican. So by going there and railing off on these social issues that are not really at the top of mind when you're thinking about saving a country, it's so random and inappropriate that it's just like find some other time to not be. President Trump has used every moment as a campaign speech. Try to find a time to not make it a campaign. Charlie Kirk's funeral, memorial service, he used it to campaign. He talked about tariffs and how Charlie Kirk would have supported it. He talked about how much he hates Democrats. Here, with the military, that's not supposed to be partisan, he's talking about DEI and how much he hates Democrats. It's like, come on now, be a leader. Be a leader. You're calling the entire military in 2 different instances over the last 2 weeks.
The military likes DEI, so they're all happy.
Yeah, that's a broad general overstatement. That's a broad general overstatement.
You couldn't find 2
that's
people
one, and then somebody in the control room.
DEI.
Yes, I love it. My favorite thing in the world. Okay, so it's just.
Have you ever had to sit through these?
The point I did.
Diversity training
I actually
seminars?
led the DEI team at my last
yourself.
job. Nope, it was wonderful.
God.
It was beautiful. We taught people how to get rid of their implicit bias that makes people like myself uncomfortable at work for no reason, or explicit bias.
Validity, and in fact makes people more likely to harbor racial.
No, it got a lot better. So I disagree. It's because I've been on a board of people that have done it before and implemented it in the workplace. I think everybody had better understanding.
Expertise. Studies of the implicit bias test have shown there is no validity to this concept, and that it makes people more racially
it's showing you
when you call out these
fine. So passive aggressive statements about race, about things that you know nothing about.
You don't think it's paternalizing and passive aggressive
I'm saying
to sit people down and explain to them why internally they have racism like some disease they've breathed in through the air?
No, I think why DEI is great, especially in a workplace, is because somebody may genuinely just be talking and not realize that they're being deeply offensive to somebody who's of, let's say, a different background when it comes to disability, when it comes to upbringing, when it comes to race, when it comes to socioeconomic status. And so when you understand that these differences are sometimes very sensitive topics, then maybe you have more care with your words when you work in an open environment. And I think that it definitely is meaningful for people to understand those nuances, because perhaps you grew up a little bit privileged, or perhaps you grew up when you weren't never around anybody disabled. So maybe you'll stop staring at the person with the wheelchair going down the hall and making them feel uncomfortable because you have been so sheltered that you have never seen somebody like that. And so I don't think that that's a bad thing.
Sanitized, non-human, boring, like
so human is making
deadening.
Other people uncomfortable who are in different environments.
Walking on eggshells all the time.
That's not walking on eggshells.
It's
to understand how people who are disabled feel, and to learn how they feel, since you haven't had anybody disabled, let's say in your family or direct contact, your best friend is not disabled, so to understand their perspective.
If I ran a company and I truly hated my employees and I wanted them to suffer, I would make them do DEI training. But that does it for us on Rising Live today. That thing's doing some things over there. Look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any of our content. And we'll be back tomorrow. We're just getting started this week. See you then.
Our set's going on.